I want to talk about aesthetics. I want to talk about music. I want to talk about the New Year's celebration because of a video that was linked to me by a guy named Paul Talk who watched my video on Faith Goldie and Jordan Peterson. He asked me to watch his, and I did. He made some comments in there about music that he likes and doesn't like, and I thought it would be worth going down that road a little bit. So, our pop culture, our music that we have in our society is horrible. It's garbage. It's lowbrow. It's of a low artistic quality, and it also promotes moral degradation. So, basically, there's nothing good about it. My first thought, and just to give you an example, so when I was watching the New Year's celebrations, there was one guy I'd never heard of who was singing this. And it's about sex, okay. And then there was Britney Spears, who was wearing a skin tight bodysuit and lip syncing a song about sexual innuendo, and the hook of the song was filled with profanity. Okay. Not only that, but all of these people have backup dancers. I thought this was supposed to be an individualist society. I thought the society was supposed to celebrate the individual and the accomplishment and not use the bodies of people, human beings, as this totemic construction, using the bodies of people really as building blocks for this Tower of Babel. It's really like late imperial Roman stuff, Nero and Caligula. That was the vibe I was getting last night when Steve Harvey, the bald black dude with the walrus mustache, who's the game show host, was marrying what looked to be like a 60-year-old man and a 30-year-old woman on live television. I mean, he's a game show host. What are we doing? It's just so bizarre, these rituals. I don't get it. But you're not supposed to get it. I think the elite just want to give us a show, and if they can undermine everything that's good and elevated and valuable, then that's just an added bonus for them. But it's, just like send a bunch of confused signals and generate some revenue, and then everything will be fine. Okay. So they've got a music industry that relies on multi-million-dollar studios owned by billionaires. They hire teams of technicians, sort of artists, but really more like technicians, right? To create songs that they then have a professional presenter, not so much a musician, but a face piece for this product, and they put that out there. And it's something with a beat or a rhythm that is so simple that a child who doesn't know anything from anything could remember it, and it's all about sex and violence and degradation. 100 years ago, people listened to folk music, and they played folk music, and they had liturgical music. They had hymns. People would sing church hymns. The content is not really so important to me as the praxis of it. So people in some province somewhere would have to play their own music, make up their own stuff, improvise their own stuff, and pass it down from person to person and generation to generation. There was no centralized cultural mechanism for the distribution of this stuff. It was organic. It was the process of a nation, of a people expressing themselves. And therefore, if you listen to folk music from anywhere in the world, it's always pretty good, and it has an attraction. And it has that attraction because it's authentic and it's truthful in a way that this garbage, this filth that I was listening to last night on the television can never be. The people in the studios cannot recreate the authenticity of generations of people isolated, producing music for themselves and their families. You're talking about hundreds of years potentially in these folk traditions just to come up with several different songs and variations. You think 20 people who all listen to the same stuff could ever do that? They can't. So what we've had is the destruction of the older traditional music due to invasion by this what we know as the pop culture. Everyone who's listening to the pop culture music is got part of their brain turned off that they're not going to be able to use to construct something that would have been more valuable and more interesting to people who are more like them. And what I mean by that is music. It's historically, culturally, socially located. If you're beaming music out of Los Angeles and New York to 5 different parts of the United States that are all separated by over 1,000 miles, and it means something to them, then those places are no longer very interesting and unique. They're all getting the same material. So that's what we've lost. It's not great. It's horrible. It's no good. But what do we do? What are we supposed to do? There's basically 2 options. And one is we go out and we tell people, look, this stuff is no good. You shouldn't like it anymore. The other option is we produce culture to offer an alternative to the stuff that we don't like that's being created by the elites. So what do? Trying to create the alternative is always difficult and painful when you see that your work doesn't really take off like you want it to. It doesn't take off because the game that we're playing is unfairly stacked against us. Our enemies own basically every cultural, social, and governmental institution. And a lot of the private institutions are, them basically buying people to spread their message for them in avenues that they couldn't speak openly. So our stuff doesn't take off because they have mutually reinforcing networks. It's the old problem of you have a government. Let's say you have government. You have the EPA, you've got NPR, and then you've got the Sierra Club. Okay, so the governmental person, someone in the bureaucracy, will be listening to NPR, and a voter will be listening to NPR, and NPR will be giving a liberal, progressive message, and then they'll use empirical data from the Sierra Club or whatever interest group it is. But then it turns out that the Sierra Club and NPR are both funded by the Ford Foundation or the Rockefeller Foundation. So instead of being 2 independent groups, they're actually being run or operated by the same people. Their money comes from the same place. And then there's also a lobbyist who's talking to the government person. So to the voter, it looks like 3 completely different bodies: a bureaucracy, an interest group, and then a news outlet. But in fact, they're all subject to the same elites. Culturally, we've got the same thing. It's no surprise that if you watch a New Year's celebration, the TV people are pushing music acts. They're doing it because they're all owned by the same people. The radio, same thing. The internet, a little different. That's why this is so important. This mutually reinforcing network that we're fighting against makes the struggle very hard. The other alternative is to go out and tell people, hey, you shouldn't like this stuff, and to give good reasons why. And the most effective one, I think, is to explain to people how they've been lied to. My experience is that if you can show someone how they've been lied to, it sends their alerts up, it makes them feel imperiled, and then that is the psychological motivating human response that we can use to help get our message across. So it never helps to lie. You can only tell the truth. But if you can find a way to tell the truth to people in a way that gets that response from them, then you can do other things. You can try to convince them that, for example, they shouldn't listen to pop music or they shouldn't go see Hollywood movies, and then that kind of thing. So we've got to do the political and cultural proselytizing, the social evangelizing to create, I suppose, the market for the alternative culture. Once you've convinced people that they shouldn't be consuming the mainstream pop culture anymore, then perhaps they will go out and they will find the alternative. I mean, have you seen the views that some of this like alt-right or far-right or dissident right material gets, the podcasts, the videos, all the stuff people make? It's really picking up compared to like 4 or 5 years ago. So we're doing something right, and we've got to keep doing it. So basically, I guess my point here would be to say that aesthetics, music, everything, it's all part of a gigantic cultural war that we're waging against these people. And it's no coincidence, and it should be no surprise, that every aspect of our culture that is popular is owned and controlled by the same people. They are the tastemakers. The people who are trying to destroy us are the ones who are choosing all this. There's no accident that it all agrees with each other, because it's part of that self-amplifying system they've created to make sure that their money is successful, that what they're spending their money on is successful. So aesthetics is nothing different, and we've got to make sacrifices. You know, perhaps there's some art out there that you used to like, and now you know that you shouldn't be indulging in it anymore. That's just something we got to deal with. However, I can guarantee you that for everything you have to give up, there's something even better out there. We've just got to find it and promote it and try to show it to other people. Thank you very much for your time, and Happy New Year.